Chris, how are you doing?
Great.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Dale.
Chris is running for County Commissioner in District 4. And Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself. What led to you to run? What was what prompted you to get into the political arena?
Okay. Yeah, it's a great question. So what prompted me is really my family, my kids, and being an example to them. It's kind of like, being a Christian. If I'm not reading my Bible, how can I tell my kids to read their Bible if they don't see me reading my Bible? And, so I'm teaching them, I'm homeschooling my kids, and I'm teaching them about the Constitution, about civics, about, our country is really going down a path that is not something that I ever thought I would see in my lifetime, in this country. And seeing that, I just realized I need to get involved in whatever way I can get involved. And when the county commissioner position came open for a vote, I looked at that and looked at the individual that's in that position right now and the job that they're doing. And my slogan is Spokane deserves better. And I know I could do a better job than what's currently being done in Spokane County in that position. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring.
Right. And so you're actually running in a Republican contested race. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic there where, all three are running essentially on the same ticket. Mm-hmm. And the differences are really in how you would govern, really. I mean, truly, and how you would use the position to do the right thing for your district. And that kind of leads into the redistricting that just happened that we were mandated to do by the state. So question 15 on this survey, under other Spokane County redistricting, and the background is that by state mandate, the number of commissioners in Spokane County has increased from 3 to 5. During the 2022 election, citizens in each of the 5 new county districts will elect a commissioner to represent their district on the county commissioner board. This changes the current election process from a countywide vote for 3 commissioners to a district vote for 1 commissioner. And to clarify, that's countywide it's still countywide in the primary, but in the general, it is district only.
Yeah, well, they vote on, citizens will vote just in District 4 for District 4, and it'll be the same in the general.
In the general, okay. And then the new structure has the potential to favor urban interests over rural. This tension is illustrated by what happened recently with HB 1812 in the state legislature. HB 1812 was a bill that controlled the placement of wind turbines and solar panels. State legislatures from rural areas negotiated in good faith, only to see their efforts undermined by Governor Jay Inslee's veto of bill elements that would give rural citizens a voice in how their lands are used. Thus, the state bureaucracy based in Olympia, asserted power and control over Eastern Washington lands. The response is that the new voting configuration by individual districts presents a major challenge in that all 5 county commissioners have a dual obligation and allegiance to their district, their electorate, and to the county as a whole in their elected position. You responded to 10, strongly agree. And so how do you see that you're out, you're campaigning, you're looking for votes, you're garnering interest, and you now have a dual allegiance. You have to go to your district, you have to get the votes from the district, but then you have to serve the entire county. How do you do that objectively in a way that helps your district, but also keeps the entire county in mind?
Well, I think it goes back to having principles. And regardless of whether the citizens of District 4 vote on me or all of Spokane County vote for me, every decision that I make is governed by principles, then I'm going to be serving all of Spokane County equally the way our founding fathers meant for our county to be governed, our state to be governed, our America to be governed, is by principles. So if we have principles which are based on Judeo-Christian principles, that's where our Constitution was built on, we had a group of men, our founding fathers, that came together to create the Constitution. They didn't all agree on even on how to serve God or how to be a Christian, but they had principles. And because they had principles, they came up with an incredible document called the Constitution of the United States. And so that's how I will govern, is based on principles, not based on, some entity pressuring me to vote one way or another. It's on, sound foundational principles.
And it's interesting that all of the founding fathers had a biblical education, regardless of whether they truly believed that the Bible was the inspired word of God or not.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah, and it is, and it truly lends to their wisdom. It lends to their character, and even those who were non-Christian were not atheists; they were theists.
Right.
They didn't not believe in a God, but they didn't necessarily believe in the Christian God. So it's a common misconception in American society today that the founding fathers were atheists and so on. That simply wasn't true.
Right.
Simply wasn't the case. And even the ones that did not believe had that background and that education in the Bible. And in fact, the Bible is the founding book for every book that we've ever read today. Everything transpires from that. It was in and of itself the first book.
Right.
And in fact, it's an encyclopedia actually more than it is a book, because it's a group of books. But the issue at hand here is, so just propose let's just propose that the districts 1 and 2, they say, hey, we need power. We have a power crisis. Energy prices are soaring. In order to meet supply demand issues, we need more supply to meet the demand. And they look at your district and say, hey, well, you guys have like a lot of hilly areas, perfect for wind turbines. Let's put these wind turbines up there. And you look at that and you go, okay, for the county as a whole, this is great. But your constituents in District 4 are going, hey, we don't want these wind turbines up here. They're an eyesore. We don't like these things. And we not only do we not like them, but you're not going to put them on my land. How do you balance something like that, where you have to serve your district now, not the county as a whole? Well, you have to serve both. So you have to really balance it. And how do you inform your district? Like, hey, maybe I agree with you that they're probably not the best thing. But we need power. So we need either an alternate scenario. You guys need to give me something that we can work with, or maybe I have to put these windmills up here on the hill. Theoretical, but how would you balance something like that?
That's a great application of this, and that is, first of all, I believe in property rights, and as a real estate investor, that's my background. I've been a full-time real estate investor for the last going on 20 years now, and property rights is a huge issue. So I would approach my constituents with that principled mindset, as it's your property. I shouldn't demand you use your property for any way that you don't think that you should use it. But going back to that wind turbine issue and power, we got to look at that as what's the feasibility of really putting up all these wind turbines? Even as the eyesore as they are they really producing enough power to pay for themselves? And some of the studies that I've seen is, by the time they pay for themselves, they're obsolete. And you got to replace the wind turbine again.
And this is just, again, it's actually a theoretical in a way, but this is precisely what happened with the HB 1812. And Governor Inslee just said, nope. It doesn't matter. We're going to put them up there, and I've seen studies too that even just the cost of maintaining, because they break down constantly. They're not just a well-oiled machine that is just going all the time.
Right.
They're constantly broken down. In fact, if you've ever driven to Seattle and you see them up the hill and you go, well, why is that one spinning and that one isn't? It's probably because it's broken down.
Right.
And it's just sitting there producing nothing while taking up land, and they don't look good. And
where are the environmentalists on the environmental impact of these?
And the millions of birds they kill every year, and so on and so forth.
You don't hear from them on that.
Right, and because there's a double standard that we all know about. But the question really more is a hypothetical. How do you serve your constituency and your voters, and how then do you serve the entire county? Would you say, you believe in property rights, so for those come first. So then let's just say that you really don't have a choice. how would you navigate that? Where you say, "Hey, we need power, so I need an alternate."
Well, we look at how what are some other options to provide power? Why would I have to violate their property rights to provide power? We have all the dams in eastern Washington that provide a tremendous amount of power. And it's not affecting the property rights of a lot of people that
Right.
they're already there, and there's other ways that we can look at providing power without violating your rights.
Right.
And that's the most important
So
thing.
no compromise on values. You're strictly saying this is the law. You have the right to your property, and you can't. There's absolutely unequivocally no way we can do this, even if it does serve the entire county as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Your rights supersede the rights of the county and the government.
Right.
That's the government is for the people. The people are. The government is only to make sure that we keep our rights. Our rights are maintained and protected, and the government isn't to take away our rights.
Right.
And that's
Or property.
which is property rights amongst a lot of other rights that
Right.
the government is infringing on.
Right, and they do every day. Well, I think that's good to hear, and that really is the core thing we believe we vote is one of our messages is vote your values, and the big message from us is if you are grounded in your faith, you're grounded Christian, and you're grounded in the Constitution, then when you run for elected office, and if you are put into an elected office by your constituency, then you cannot. There are certain things you can't compromise on: life, individual rights, and the Constitution. Right. So, is that something that you stand for? Is that the constituency comes first, government second?
100%. Constituency comes first, government is second. And if the government needs something, let me give you an example. I've been involved in, and this may be a little bit controversial, but in the Eastern Washington movement, in separating East Washington from Western Washington so that we can have fair representation here on the east side of Washington State, right? And one of the platforms on that is no property taxes. It's like, okay, how do we have a government with no property taxes? How do we fix things? Well, you're assuming that we're going to have the same kind of government that Western Washington has. If we have a smaller government, then we're not going to need as much money to run the government. And so that's the same thing. And the other thing about this, going from 3 to 5 commissioners, I think it's a great thing because now you have a larger number of individuals with input, and hopefully individuals that have principles. But with the larger number that we have, you're not going to have maybe one guy that has a strong personality overriding a smaller panel or a smaller board of commissioners. So I think in that regard, it can be a good thing in that there's more voices coming to the table. But we have to elect voices that have strong constitutional values and strong principles.
And that don't serve feelings, but serve actual science, data, and things that represent the people and bills. And because really, I'm conservative in fiscally conservative, and all of my spending decisions are based on my values. There is this good? Is this bad? Is it what purpose does it serve, and so on? And of course, you buy clothes and things like that. But at a higher level, it's when I go buy a car, I'm not going to buy a $60,000 car because I can't afford a $60,000 car. But I'll find a nice $20,000 car, right? So just being fiscally conservative to me means that you look at what you have. And you don't look at what you have in the future. You look at what you have now in order to spend. Yeah. And so I think one of the primary roles as commissioner will be ensuring that we don't continue in a state of indebtedness. Right. And so how do you see navigating that issue and making sure that we balance a budget and we stay on budget and hopefully come under budget?
Well, we have to be fiscally responsible with the budget. We can't be spending money on ridiculous things that really don't serve the people. If we want to, if the county or the city or whoever wants to paint, butterflies and rainbows. It can't be at the taxpayer dollars, right? It has to, that should not be money that the county spends. The county, I believe in smaller government. And if the money is not there for something that really isn't serving the county and the majority of the people, and I would be careful with that as well, because we live in a republic, and I love the fact that a republic isn't a majority. It's not a democracy. It's not mob rules. We're a republic, and a republic protects the individual rights. And so, but when it comes to being fiscally responsible, we have to look at how the money is being spent, who's spending it. For example, the roads. Why are we spending? Well, there's a lot of issues with the roads, but first of all, why is money being taken from the road budget and taken and put in somewhere else? That shouldn't happen. But in addition to that, why do we spend money on somebody to go repair a pothole in the road, and then 3 weeks later the pothole's back, or the asphalt is all pushed out of the pothole, which I see all the time. As a business owner, if I had an employee that provided that kind of work to my business, they wouldn't be an employee anymore. So why are we allowing that substandard kind of work to be done in the county?
Right, and I would kind of push a little bit back on that, because I don't necessarily know that that's the fault of the worker specifically, but I would say that the tools that are given are not appropriate. And what I mean by that is, when you patch an asphalt surface, it needs time to cure. So if you patch that thing and you don't stop people driving over it, it's going to form the same pothole that was there before.
Right.
In fact, on the issue of roads, one of the things that I've never understood is why we use asphalt in the first place. It's guaranteed to fail. Why are we not just putting concrete everywhere? And why are we not building roads out of something that we know is lasting in concrete?
Right.
That's why we build freeways out of concrete. They take less maintenance, and yes, they do fail, but they fail a lot less than asphalt.
Right.
Yes, asphalt is cheaper, but in the long run, it isn't.
It's not.
Because you're spending over and over and over again. On my block, since I've moved in, we have this big divot, and it was funny. In one of our old cars, the boots went out on the back of the car, so the suspension just didn't work. And when we were moving in, my wife's son was in the back, and he had stuff around him. And my wife didn't see the pothole, and she hit it, and it just bounced. But even in a car with suspension that works, that thing, you bounce, because it's such. And I always wonder, hey, why is my road this way still after? We've been here 8 years now in the same property, and it's still the same way.
Right.
And I do often wonder why that is, and I think that is one of the frustrations I think overall that people do have are roads, and using that money for other things, and truly you're not serving the purpose. Like, right. I pay my tabs, pay my taxes. The money is meant to go towards infrastructure on the roads and repairing roads and so on, and it just seems like it doesn't get done.
Well, that's not responsible. If the money is for the roads, then it should go for the roads, not move to somewhere else, some other agenda, something else. My understanding is the county had a surplus budget. Why not take some of that surplus budget and put it towards the roads, or give it back to the taxpayers in maybe a property tax break? In this inflationary environment that we're living in, we all need a break, especially with our property taxes, whether you're a homeowner or a tenant, a renter. If you're tenants, and you're paying more in rent, you got to think, why am I paying more in rent? It's because as a property owner, I have to raise rent because my property taxes have gone up. So it affects everybody, regardless of whether you're a homeowner or a tenant.
And I actually just had an interesting discussion with someone about this issue. They were like, well, I rent, I don't pay property taxes. I said, you absolutely do pay property taxes. You pay property taxes and then 10% or something. And you're not just paying to cover the mortgage, you're paying the depreciation. You're paying everything for that home as though you owned it, but you're paying a little bit more because the person who has put their assets on the line so that they can give you the opportunity to rent from them, because you may not qualify for that home, has to cover the cost of maintaining that asset.
Right.
So you're paying for that, as well as you're paying for the property taxes and the interest. And people just, it's amazing to me how many people, even my age, in their mid-30s, they don't understand this
Yeah.
principle. It's anytime anything in our economy is passed through multiple hands, there's a markup. Whether it's 1%, 2%, 3%, 10%, there is a markup.
Yep.
When you go to Walmart and you buy clothes off the rack and it's $5, Walmart didn't just pay $5 for that. They probably paid $1.20,
Right.
and they're selling it to you for $5, and you think you're getting a good deal. But then the manufacturer, probably manufactured it for 85 cents, sold it to a distributor for $1, and the distributor's selling it for $1.20. It's marked up 3 times before it even gets to you.
Right.
And so it's just amazing to me how people don't fundamentally see this and don't fundamentally understand this.
Well, that goes back to our education system.
Right. It does. It absolutely does. And that's something that definitely needs to be looked at. And there's a huge movement. And Kirk Cameron, who's going to be speaking at our event this year, a small plug, but that's one of his biggest things. And right now he has a fantastic homeschool movement. He's getting, he's encouraging families to homeschool. He's encouraging families that cannot homeschool to get involved in the school boards. And it's just going to be fantastic because it is such an important issue now, especially with all of the social and cultural agendas that are being pushed into public schools.
Propaganda.
Exactly. And the big issue is that I don't want to subject my children to that or other people's children. I wouldn't subject other people's children to my biblical beliefs other than in conversation with them as to why I believe it, but I wouldn't push it on them. I wouldn't force it on them.
Right.
And that's exactly what's happening in the public schools.
Well, and that's why I took my kids out of the public schools and I homeschool my kids now. And they were in private school up until my oldest son was in 6th grade, and then some family life changes happened, and so we ended up putting them in public schools for a couple of years. And when I was hearing and seeing what was going on in the public school system, I was like, I'm a single dad, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to take my kids out of public school. Whatever it takes, I'm going to homeschool them myself. And so I was looking for different curriculum and how I was going to teach them. And number one, I had to be biblical-based curriculum. But number two, it has to be something that is foundational, constitutional, something that's going to teach about our Constitution. I want my kids to know how our country was created on biblical principles. But number three is I want my kids to learn responsibility and not be entitled, and learn how to create something, how to have critical thinking, and that's just not learned in the public school system. And critical thinking, you're talking about just the economics of a $5 item at Walmart. Well, if you critically think about how this didn't just magically happen, just like all the electrical cars. It's great we have electric cars, but it just doesn't magically happen because it comes out of a building. I mean, that electricity has to be created from somewhere. And the reason we're in the state that we're in right now is because there's no critical thinking. There's no logical thinking. They don't think about, so batteries had to be created and electricity has to be created, and all it has to come from somewhere. And where does it come from? A lot of it comes from precious minerals and fossil fuels to create even electricity.
Right. And burning coal for electricity. People say, "Oh, we need more electric cars." It's like, okay, let's burn more coal to fill up your electric car at home. I have one, but that was an economical decision for me. I don't have one because it was something that I was like, "Oh, I have to have one because it's better for the environment." No, I understand that they're going to burn coal to allow me to fuel that up, just like they burn coal for me to turn on lights. Right. And I do think that there's solutions to energy, which we won't get into. But the point is that I think, again, this comes back to using your dollars to promote your values. So where I spend my money, how I spend my money, economic decisions that make sense. The reason we bought an electric car is my wife's a house cleaner. She drives probably 12,000, 15,000 miles a year. She was spending $300 a month in gas. Yeah. And this is when gas was $2 a gallon. So we're looking at that, and I was like, this doesn't make sense. And then I started researching, how much it costs to refill in an electric car and so on. So we just got rid of a small little compact electric car. Costs about $4 or $5 a day to fill it from empty to full, which it's never empty. And it just saved a lot of money being fiscally conservative.
So $4 or $5 a day to charge it?
To charge it from dead to full. It's only a little 93 miler, so it doesn't get a whole, it's not a Tesla or anything like that. It's still a Ford Focus, but it does the job. It's plenty big for what she uses it for. It's a daily driver.
Yeah.
She never goes more than 60 miles in a whole day. And if she does have to, or if she's going far, she just takes we have a little Subaru, she takes the Subaru. So again, this comes back to fiscal responsibility. I looked at that and I said, this isn't feasible.
Right.
Right. And we could do it. We can spend the $300 a month in gas. That's fine. It's a tax write-off, but it doesn't make sense to do it.
Right.
If I can save $200 a month, I'm going to save $200 a month.
Right.
And that's how the government should be functioning.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and they should be teaching, my kids, let me put it this way, I teach my kids about taxes. If you think about the tax code, so you mentioned taxes, I'm not going to pay off my mortgage because, I get a tax break or whatever. Well, that's dumb. It's better to own a home free and clear than have a mortgage that you're paying just
100% interest on over the life.
Exactly. Yeah. So, if you think about the tax code, and if you were to print that out, the tax code would probably print out to about 4 feet tall. And 90% of Americans operate out of about 2 or 3 inches of the tax code, which is W-2 income earners. The rest of the tax code is business owners. But what are we taught in the school system? We're taught how to go get a job and pay out of the most expensive way to pay our taxes, which is being a W-2 income earner. And so we're not taught fiscal responsibility. The rest of the tax code, what is that for? We think the rest
special
of
interests. I mean,
well, that's what we're programmed to believe is special interests. The rest of the tax code is rich, wealthy politicians that put stuff in there. It is special interests so that they don't have to pay taxes. Well, you don't have to be a rich, wealthy politician to access all of
that code.
All the code.
The big difference is that they have the resources to hire firms that have an army of people who can get into the code, and that's the biggest difference. And I think we're going to see a huge shift in this. So I'm a tax accountant by trade. So
okay, so you know that you can pay your kids and not have to pay taxes on that if you have a business.
Right, if there's rules surrounding it, but yeah, that is a possibility. And so I wouldn't recommend that for everyone. You don't just say that you don't just give them money and say they did a job. They should be doing a job.
That's principles, though. That goes back to the principles. But I have my kids work in my business, and because my kids work in my business, and because I know about this, that's the thing, is it's knowledge. And having the knowledge and the information, then you can make the decision on how can I be fiscally responsible with paying my taxes. So I pay my kids, and that's so part of what I do is, besides being a real estate investor, I also teach and train real estate investing and financial literacy. And part of the financial literacy that I teach is, before you get into real estate investing, you start buying property, you have to understand
the economics
surrounding that. And part of the economics is, how can you pay a 30-year mortgage off in 7 to 10 years, which is absolutely doable, and how can you pay less in taxes? I look at it kind of like a three-legged stool, where the seat of the stool is what God's created us to do in our life. God's created you with a specific purpose and a calling in your life, okay? And the legs of the stool is what is going to give you the stability so that you can pursue what God's created you to do, right? The problem is, the legs of the stool are so unstable that we never actually have the opportunity to sit on that stool or pursue the calling that God's given us. Okay, so what are the legs of the stool? The legs of the stool are debt freedom, getting out of debt. Okay, so getting your mortgage paid off, understanding how finances work. Paying less in taxes is the second leg, understanding that we have to pay taxes, but that 4 feet of tax code, it's just about education. Because even when I mentioned that, you're like, yeah, but you got to do these things. It's not really that difficult. You just need to follow the rules and know what the rules are.
Right.
But that's what accountants say. That's what CPAs say. Well, and CPAs don't even teach. They don't even inform their clients that they can pay less in taxes by just that one simple thing. It's $12,700 per child that you could pay your kids. Now, they do have to work.
Yep.
I got my boys working right now on one of my properties while I'm sitting here. And so I have a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. And so they're working, and I'm paying them with tax-free money because I understand how that works. So I can earn money on that project and not pay taxes on, let's say so it's a property that they're remodeling.
To be clear, you're talking about you save the FICA tax is what you're alluding to.
Right.
Yeah. Because people think, oh, well, you save 12.7 because you get to deduct it from their wages. It's like, no, but you save the other 15.3% as well.
I don't pay any taxes.
Right.
I earned that 12,000. So it's 12,700 is I think the max of what it was when Trump came into office. It was like $6,500 or something. He raised it to 12,700. But I can pay. I can earn. So say I have a project and I earn $30,000 on this house. So say I fix it up, I sell it, and I earn $30,000. Okay, if my sons worked on that and I pay a contractor $12,000, well, I could pay my sons $12,000, but that money is earned. It comes into my bank account, but I paid it to them, so I don't pay any taxes on that. So, so you can do the same thing as a W-2 income earner, but you have a side gig, a hustle that you do, and like you have a business here. I don't know if it's a non-profit, yeah. So probably
it's fine. I understand. Yeah.
So, but you have a side business, and you have your kids set up your microphones, and you have your kids shred your paper. My kids they clean my office, they do my whiteboards. But what I'm doing in having them do that is the money goes into their bank account, and now I'm teaching them fiscal responsibility at a very young age because they all have debit cards. They've had debit cards at very young ages. And so when we go to the county fair and they want a ride on the fair.
They have their money that they earned.
They're paying for it. Right. So I'm going to tell you a story about my son.
So instead of having an allowance, you have a job, right?
Exactly.
Which I think is very important.
Right. So my job, my son, when he was 7 years old, so a little bit about me. I grew up I'm the oldest of six, and my dad was in the timber industry, and so grew up. We didn't have money. I don't want to say I was poor, but when you have 6 mouths to feed and you don't make a lot of money, my mom had to really stretch that dollar a long ways. And as a result of that, anything that I wanted, I had to go out and earn. Right. And I remember at a young age that. Going to school, and my parents, back in my day, was Kmart, and the clothes that I got were Trax shoes and Rustler jeans, and so, going to school, if you're wearing Trax shoes and Rustler jeans, you are not one of the cool kids, and that's a lot of pressure, right?
It is. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to wear Nike, shoes and Levi's, which I don't recommend because they support all this other stuff that I don't. That's another issue, but back then. If I wanted that, I had to go earn the money to buy what my parents couldn't afford. So as I got into real estate investing and business ownership and started having some success in my life, I wanted to instill those same values. I wanted to transfer that to my kids. So my son, when he was 7 years old, he says, "Dad, I want a motorcycle. I want to buy a motorcycle." And all my kids know that I will pay for whatever they want up to half.
Okay.
But they have to pay the other half. So I said, "Son, that's great. Let's go, you can have a motorcycle. I'll pay for half of it. And you got to pay for the other half." And he says, "Dad, I'm 7 years old. How am I going to pay for the other half?" And I said, "Okay, well, let's do this. Let's have a mastermind session. And as your father, I'm going to help you figure out how you can come up with the other half."
Yeah.
And so we, started researching and kind of looking at some different options. And I live on 5 acres just on the south side of the valley, and we have chickens, and the chickens produce eggs. And we had a lot of chickens, we had a lot of eggs that we were just giving away to whoever. And so we had a refrigerator full of eggs, and so it just kind of dawned on me. I was like, "Noah, you can just go door to door and sell eggs." But I didn't just send him out door to door to sell eggs. I had to equip him with the tools on how to do it. And I said, "Okay, no, this is what you're going to do. I want you to go to the door and open it up. the eggs when you knock on the door and you say, "Hey, my name's Noah McIntosh, and I live just down the road, and I have farm fresh eggs. Would you like 1 dozen or 2?" Yeah, so
you're not giving an emotion whether they're going to buy them. You're telling them you're going to buy them. How many do you want?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so he did that. And not only did he do that, but he brought his little brother and his little sister with him and to help him with that. And he paid them, and he paid for the chicken feed. I made him pay for the chicken feed.
Wow.
And at the end of the summer, he raised enough money to pay for his half of the motorcycle. I paid for the other half, and now he's 17. He'll be 17 in September. He's got a garage full of motorcycles. He's just got passion for that.
Wow.
But what it did is it taught him fiscal responsibility and taught him responsibility to begin with. And at the end of the summer, I was so proud of him because he sent it out on his own without any encouragement from me. He sent out thank you notes to everybody that bought eggs from him for the summer. It was just so, we'll picture him with the motorcycle.
He knew, he knew that was valuable to them.
Yep.
And that's the innocence of a child, is that, you and I say, if I say thank you, is it cheesy? Is it, but the innocence of a child is, no, these people, they contributed to my goal, and yes, they got a product from it, but I should thank them for that,
right,
for giving me their business. Instead of buying from the store, they bought from me so I can get my motorcycle. And
exactly.
And I think there's, if you look at all good and all successful, I should say successful in terms of fiscally successful entrepreneurs. You look at your Mark Cubans, your Kevin O'Leary's, and so on. They, from a very young age, were essentially hustlers, right? That's what your kid did. He went and hustled. He's like, I'm going to go hustle. I'm going to sell these eggs, and I'm going to get the thing that I want. And I think Mark Cuban was like 6 or 7, and he was selling lemonade and stamps, and he would go buy stamps, and he would mark them up 10 cents. And then, but people would buy him because, it's a cute kid. He's like out here trying to make 10 cents a stamp. And they would pay the 10 cents a stamp. But look at what that built for him. He realized that, hey, I can go and sell this. And it wasn't about the value of the stamp. It was like, what am I offering this person? Right? I'm bringing this stamp to them, right? And so that's just I think a fundamental lesson that I think any kid, and when I see lemonade stands, things like that, I think, I'm British, and you don't get that in the UK. You don't get lemonade stands and these fundamental American things that we look at it and it's cute. It's a kid's with a lemonade stand. It's like that kid's learning a lesson here.
Right.
They're learning how to stand on their own 2 feet. And every time that you go and you don't even have to drink the lemonade if you don't want to. But go give the kid $2, take the lemonade, say thank you. And if you get in your car and you don't want to drink it, don't drink it. Yeah. But you're helping them learn lessons.
Exactly.
And I think it's inherently valuable today because a lot of people don't get those lessons. And there's also a lesson to be learned there from a commissioner standpoint too, because you have to stand on your own 2 feet.
Right. And that's exactly where I was going. Right now, my son is... in that hustle, he bought a car. He found a car that was somebody was just going to take to the junkyard. He bought it for $300. He fixed it up, and he's selling it for like $1,500 right now. So he's hustling out doing that. So one of my platforms is to address the issue of homelessness and the public safety challenge that comes along with that. It's a huge problem in Spokane County, and the biggest problem is entitlement. We are entitling the homeless to live on the back of the taxpayer dollars.
Right.
And that's not being fiscally responsible. I wouldn't let my kids just live for free and do whatever they want. And that's what we're doing. So if you're not going to let your own children do that, why are we letting other kids do that? And it's interesting. I just watched this series called Snowflake on one of the programs that I'm probably going to be canceling the channel because of what they're supporting. But what it was about is these parents trick their kids. They have these kids that are just totally out of control. And so they tricked them. They thought they were going on some reality show. And really, they were going on a reality show, but they thought it was going to be some plush, villa with a swimming pool and, the trash that we see on TV these days. But it wasn't that. They went up into the mountains and...
Boot camp?
And they had to learn these valuable lessons.
It is life-changing for them.
Lifeless and totally life-changing. And they went through this whole, a couple of them quit. They couldn't, they were just too entitled. But going through through this, boot camp, so to speak, they're camping out and it's, unfortunately, they got foul mouths, and it's it's terrible in that way. But the lessons that they learned changed their lives, and they're no longer being entitled. And that's how we got to address this homeless situation. There's 3 areas of homeless that we have to address. The first area, and that I will address, and the first area is the area of homeless, where people find themselves homeless through no fault of their own. That's death, divorce, disability, foster care that's aged out of the system, and now
veterans.
And veterans, absolutely.
I actually just interviewed a gentleman yesterday, and he was a veteran, and he Leon Lawson. Sorry, not Leon Lawson. I apologize. Lonnie Ray Williams, and he was a veteran, and he was basically told, "Hey, go. Here's your pension, yada, yada, yada." He's a disabled veteran, and they just pumped him full of pills. And he said, there's got to be more than this. And he essentially ended up losing everything, was homeless, and he had a stroke, became homeless, and just fantastic story. But he was a veteran who was basically discarded and no fault of his own. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so I just wanted to share that.
So that first area, and I'm a veteran as well. And one of the things
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for is that when I made the decision to go in the Air Force, or to go in the military, my dad, he's also a veteran. He was a Vietnam veteran, and he was in the Army. And one of the best pieces of advice that he ever gave me was, if you're going to go in the military, go learn something that you can have a skill set when you come out. Him being in the Army, the only thing he learned how to do is become a mercenary, which is great. I mean, we need that aspect of the military. But he wanted me, this was back in the 80s, and we didn't really have we had the Cold War that was happening at the time. Mm-hmm. But he wanted me to learn a skill set. He wanted me to go in and learn a skill set. And so I did that. I went in the Air Force, and I learned how to fix airplanes, airframe repair specialist. And so in that first area of homelessness, that's what we need to do, is we need to enable, the system right now is like a safety net. And mm-hmm. What's a net do? If you ever gone fishing and seen fishermen with a net,
it catches things
and keeps it captured into
right.
the system. And we have to stop that. We have to give them a safety ladder out of that mm-hmm. situation for those that want out of that system. And that's done not by enabling them and creating a entitlement mentality. Mm-hmm. It's by giving them hope that there is a better way. There's a hope. Why did I learn about real estate investing and self-educate myself to do the things that I do? Because I had hope of a better life mm-hmm. than what my dad had. My dad right. was in the timber industry, and wasn't a lot of money in that. And I wanted to provide a better lifestyle than what my parents were able to provide. No right. fault of my parents. I mean, right. They did an incredible job. Yeah. But so that's what we need to do with the homeless, is give them tools to get out of that system, which is education, not the way the school system educates them, but educating them about finances, about being fiscally responsibility, and that if you do these things, you can actually own a home, you can create income, you can create wealth, you can start a business. What's your passion? And taking the money that's coming in to help the homeless and giving them that ladder out, giving them that boost, whether it's through microloans or for starting up a small business, or microloans to help them get into their first home, mm-hmm. as long as they are responsible. They have to be responsible. Mm-hmm. As a landlord, I give every one of my tenants the opportunity to own the home that they rent from me. Wow. If they choose, mm-hmm. I will sell it to them, and I will sell it to them on contract, and I'll help them own that home.
There's a program in the UK. So we have HUD here, but in England, what they do is the council will build houses. The council is like your local city council. Mm-hmm. They'll say, okay, we're going to go develop this land. They'll work with a developer. They'll develop the land. They'll develop what we call council housing. We call it low income housing here. Mm-hmm. Call it council housing. And what happens with a council house is, if you live in that house, and my dad just did this actually, and if you live in that house for let's say 10, 15 years, I don't know the exact criteria, They come to you with a discounted offer of the property, and they say, hey, you've been here this long, this is the current value of the property, this is how much you've paid, blah, 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 blah. We're going to severely discount the price of this property to you, and we want to transfer ownership to you if you're willing to pay X dollars, right? And so what that does is it's twofold. You're being rewarded for consistently paying your rent. And this isn't just for anyone. This is people who have been fiscally responsible. They paid their rent on time, majority of the time they've lived there, given, economic circumstances and so on. But that you've shown you have a track record, you're able to do this. And then they give you that opportunity to own that property. Well, my dad updated that property. So it's very interesting. It's like HUD houses here. I don't know what the rules are, but in the UK, if you have a council house, you have to have permission if you want to change the flooring and so on and so forth. And what's really odd about it is when you leave, they just come in and pull it all out anyway and put just whatever else in. And so just leave it. If it's nice, like my sister does the same thing. She puts nice flooring in, and she might not have a lot, but what she has, she's proud of. She
takes care of it.
And she takes care of it. And so, the point I'm getting at is that being a homeowner, you have a different sense of pride in the property.
Absolutely.
My dad did, he did nice things, but now he was smart. He took money out of his pension because there was a tax break. He paid off his home using the money out of his pension that he was allowed to do, and then he took more money out of his pension for home repairs, and he has literally transformed his entire home. Because now it's his, and now he has more pride in that thing. And so I think it's great that you do that for them, because people look at it and go, I can never afford this. But when you have someone who's sincere and they want you to succeed, it only takes one person in your life, that one person.
Yep.
You can have 20 people around you shouting that you're worthless and that you can't do X, but you get that one guy, that one person, that one man or woman who grabs you and says, don't listen to all of them. You can do whatever you want to do. Yep. You truly can. And we are in the greatest nation that allows that to happen. So I think...
I used to make my kids do push-ups if they ever said can't.
Really?
You can't. You said can't.
That's an Air Force thing. Like, I was in the military. You're going to do it.
Yep.
So what's the second point? So people that are homeless of no fault of their own, they're one criteria. So you handle them in a different way, a certain way?
Right. Yeah, because they want out of that system. They just need the tools, and we need to partner with investors, kind of like what you're talking about, that situation there with investors like myself who want to help the homeless. There's a lot of good-hearted people that want to help. And being kind and helping the homeless isn't just giving them $1 because they're standing on the side of the road. That doesn't help them. Unfortunately. And my kids are always like, oh, should we give them some money? I'm like, no, it's not helping them. If you want to help them, I've said, to the guys on the side of the road, if you want out of this system, it says we'll work, I'll hire you. I'll give you a job. Okay, but so helping them and partnering with investors and helping them with housing, helping them with education, and helping them with you said something about I can't remember what he said, but it cued a thought in me where me buying houses, I've bought houses without using any of my money or credit. You hear about that. You can buy a house without using any of your money or credit. Well, I'm one of those guys that have done that. I've bought a lot of houses without using any of my money or credit. So you hear people say, oh, I can't buy a house because I have no way of doing it. I don't have any money. I don't have any credit. Well, yeah, you can. You need something else besides money and credit. I teach on 4 currencies, and the currencies are, when you think of currency, you think of money. But really there's 4 currencies: money, time, relationship, and knowledge. And because of my knowledge and the relationships that I have, I've invested my time in learning how to buy houses and actually creating relationships and getting the knowledge so I can buy houses without using any of my money or credit. And it's not that difficult. It's just partnering with investors and there's guys that have money that are terrified of the market. The market's like terrifying right now. And they would rather put it into a secure asset like real estate, but they don't know how to buy the real estate. They don't know how to fix it up and do all that, everything that I know how to do. But I know how to do that because I educated myself. Right. So that's that area is just giving them the knowledge and the education and the training that they can get out of that system. The second area is the area of homeless where they're affected by drugs and the drugs, and the crime that comes along with that, unfortunately, but drugs and the mental challenges that drugs affect. And so they need help in a different way. They need help really on a spiritual level. And that's personally affected me in that situation, that area. And my brother was a 7-year meth addict. And so my parents, and it's really interesting how important the family unit is. When I left home, I was 17 years old. I went in the Air Force, and my parents were still married. And I had a great family, great upbringing. My youngest brother, who's about 11, 12 years younger than me, I was already gone out of the Air Force, and he was 12 years old when my dad left my mom. And that affected him in a very detrimental way. And, dad's out of the house, and he wants the approval of dad. Dads are so incredibly important in the home. As a matter of fact, I just read a book, Keeping Your Love On, and every married couple out there right now, read that book. Keep Your Love On. And in that book, he's talking about, he's interviewing this couple they have a child that's just totally out of control. And he's like, so he starts asking them about their marriage. And come to find out, their marriage, they're not communicating, they're just not even connecting.
They're learned skills.
Right. So because the couple, the marriage they're not connecting like God meant them to connect, the child, they're going crazy. They don't know what to do. They don't have that security that God meant for them to have. Yeah. Okay, so back to my brother. My dad leaves. He's 12 years old. He doesn't have the security. He's looking for that affirmation from his dad that mom can't give. There's just certain things that only a father can give. There's only certain things that only a mother can give. And so he got into drugs and alcohol, and he leaves home and he gets married, and he was still raised with some good values. So he started a business. He had a landscaping company. And but he never really fully dedicated his life to the Lord. He always was always using marijuana, and then he kind of went from marijuana to doing some other drugs, and eventually started doing meth. And one thing leads to another. Next thing you know, he's getting divorced. His house is in foreclosure. He loses his landscaping company, and he's homeless. He's not allowed in my house. He's not allowed at mom's house. He's stolen from everybody. He's burned every bridge, and drugs just took him down this slippery slope of totally destitute. Even so much so that it affected his physical body. He was actually hit by a tree and smashed his body. He's got an artificial hip. He's like, not even, I think he's 40, 40-some years now. But anyway, so you're looking at that, and what's the difference? Here's his older brother. I'm relatively successful. I own a lot of real estate, and financially successful. I wouldn't say marital success was my forte. That's why I recommend that book, Keep Your Love On. Well,
hindsight's always 20/20. So.
That's why the rearview mirror is this big and the windshield's that big, right?
Right.
What changed? How did he get out of that situation? 7 years meth addict. He's basically homeless. He's not allowed in anybody's house. And it wasn't until he came to that place in his life where he wanted to make a change and get the help that he needed. And we were willing to help him, but we weren't going to enable him. We weren't going to entitle him. And
there's a distinct difference, and people need to understand that. There's a distinct difference.
Oh, and trust me, I tried to help him. I gave him my vehicle because he needed a vehicle to drive for a while, and all he did was trash it. My mom gave him a vehicle. All he did was trash. He had no respect for anybody else's property. And it finally came to the place where, no, you're not getting anything else from us. Nothing else. You're not even allowed on my property.
The help that you can get is treatment.
Yeah. And when he got that treatment, when he went through the treatment, he went to, it's called The Ranch in Idaho. I highly recommend that if you have anybody that's being affected by drugs or alcohol. The Ranch in Coeur d'Alene, Tim Remington runs that. It was an amazing program for him. He came out a changed man. He's no longer a drug addict. He is now remarried. He's actually got custody back of his oldest son, and he's a contributing part of society now. It's an amazing story. So that's the second area of homeless. Those that want to get help, we need to provide that help for them. But those that don't want to get help, they need to have room and board someplace else called the county jail if they're committing crimes, or into a facility. Right now, they could be shooting up heroin right in front of a cop, and the cop just gives them a pamphlet on here's to go get help.
And that's not the cops. It's not that the cop doesn't want to act. It's that they feel
their hands are tied.
Act. Yeah,
they don't have a choice. Their hands are tied. Yeah. So we have to provide they have to be responsible for their actions. The homeless have to be responsible.
And it isn't compassionate to not arrest them. It isn't compassionate to not enforce the law on them. And it isn't compassionate to give them money at the side of the street.
Right.
There are programs out there, the Wrench, UGM, Teen Challenge, good, God-driven programs that allow these men to go in, but they have to want to have it. And the thing is, people won't change unless they get to a point in their life, no matter what it is, they get to a point in their life when they come to a realization they have to change. This is an issue.
And how do you help them come to that realization?
You have to let them fail.
Exactly.
You have to let people fail. My wife and I have had this. Her sister died of an overdose 2 years ago. We drove to and from Seattle 3-4 weekends in a row. She was her next of kin. She had to make the decision to turn off light. It was horrible. I mean, that is something that has been, it's a tough thing to decide that, hey, my sister is gone and I need to now let her physical being go. That's a very tough thing to do.
Sorry, I had to go through that.
And then her brother is currently actually he's in county jail right now, but same thing. We helped him a dozen times. And this last time, we said, we cannot help you in the way you need help. When you get out, if you agree to go to Teen Challenge, we'll work with your PO. We'll get your PO to get you into Teen Challenge, get it court ordered, because a lot of these programs can be funded by the state if it's court ordered.
Right.
But you have to the homeless that are addicted and that want to go into these programs, they have to want it, and they have to convince that judge they want it, because the judges have seen this over and over and over again, where they say, I'm going to go there, I want this so bad. You have to you got to give the judge a good reason to send you there, because it's taxpayer dollars that are putting you there. So he agreed. I felt he was sincere. He comes out, we go buy him clothes and all of his necessities, we take him to Teen Challenge. He's in there not even 2 weeks, and he leaves, and he says, I want to go to UGM, I want their program. And he said, okay, so we take him to UGM with his stuff, and he just disappears. And he's ever since been on the streets. So this isn't something that I speak too lightly or you speak too lightly. This is a true and fundamental issue. And her brother doesn't have mental health issues, okay? That's a separate issue. There are people on the streets who do genuinely have mental health issues. He doesn't have a mental health issue. He has an addiction problem.
Right.
When he is sober, he is one of the smartest people and well-educated people I've ever spoke to, because he's read 1,000 books in prison. Yeah. But he's like, I sit and I look at him, I'm like, man, you have so much potential, and I just sit and I look at that. And so this isn't something I speak too lightly, but we have to let people fail. When your child is learning to walk, do you not let them fall?
You got to let them fall.
Because they learned the lesson.
Right.
So when you're a child, you don't go, oh, I can't let him fall. No, you let him fall and you giggle a little bit.
You give them a little bit of guidance and help them so they don't crack their head on the table, but you let them fall on their bum. But when they fall on
their bum, you go, oh, boop, right? You always see mothers go, oh, boop, oh, you're okay. Come on, you can get up and do it. You let them fail. You let them fail, and then you let them stand on their own 2 feet. And within a few weeks, they're walking, and they're walking everywhere. And they have this confidence about them.
So you got to give them hope.
Yes.
That's what they need, is hope that they can. Kind of like the first area, it's the same thing. They got to have that same kind of hope. But you have to address the cause, the root cause of the addiction. Like my brother, the root cause was unforgiveness towards dad, and the lack of the father in the home. So that they have to look at that head on, and that's a spiritual. And unfortunately,
so you have to confront it.
They have to confront it, and they try to separate. Oh, we can't have faith-based programs funded by the state or whatever. It's like, well, we're spiritual beings. So, and it's the faith-based programs that actually address the spiritual component that's causing the addiction to begin with. So that has to be addressed. And if they choose not to, we can't keep entitling them.
Right.
We can't enable them, enabling them, which causes the entitlement mindset. Is it your brother or
my brother-in-law?
Brother-in-law, yeah. It's until he has no resources left, no money left, and he suffers the consequences for his actions. That's the other thing, is there has to be consequences.
Accountability.
I
have it.
Yep, I have it.
If I stop paying my mortgage, what happens to my house?
I was just going to say that. It gets foreclosed on.
Foreclosed on, and they take it away from me. That's accountability.
Yep.
Hey, you didn't pay your bills. You don't pay your water bill. What happens? They shut off your water.
If my son wanted a motorcycle, he had to go.
Right.
Knock on the doors.
Right.
It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't easy for him.
Yeah.
But he wanted a motorcycle bad enough. So they have to get to that place. Then there's the third area of homeless where they just don't care. They want to be homeless, whether it's drug addicts or they just don't want any responsibility. And one of my friends, she was telling me a story. She has she's a contractor, and she was doing a big project downtown Spokane, and a homeless guy was walking by there and just seeing that they're doing all this work, and she says, "Hey, I want to work for you. I want a job." And he's homeless, doesn't have any shoes or boots or anything, and so my friend, her name's Pam, she's like, you don't even have the equipment, you don't even have shoes. I'm not going to hire you to do this job. Well, he kept coming back, and then finally he came back and he had boots on, and he's like, I want a job, I want to work for you. So they hired him, and he ended up being a decent worker. Worked for him, she said she paid him like $20 an hour, so he's making decent money. It worked for him for like 4 years. But during that whole 4-year time frame, he never bought a house. He never rented an apartment. He lived in motels, wherever, lived on the streets. And so she asked him, she's like, you're making decent money. Why are you still homeless? I just want to be homeless. I like this lifestyle. I just like being with no responsibility to just move and go wherever I want and do whatever I want. Okay, that's a choice. We live in a free America. If that's your choice, then it can't be on the backs of the taxpayer dollars.
Well, he probably didn't. In that instance, he probably didn't. He probably didn't qualify for any of the help that someone who is truly homeless with no income and so on qualified for.
Well, she offered to help him with help him to get into a house, and he just didn't want it. Yeah. He just flat out just didn't want.
Right. And I think there are those instances out there where people see having a house as being, well, now I'm kind of
tied down.
I'm tied down. I can't do, but so my sense of security is different from other people's.
Right.
And, you have this big school bus conversion movement where people I don't want this big mortgage, or instead they buy an RV because they want to travel, and they have positions where they can do that. That's fantastic. I mean, that's great.
As long as they're not doing it on the taxpayer dollars.
Correct. And a lot of them aren't. And so what do you envision then is County Commissioner? How would you ensure that these funds are being put to good use? How do you really get your hands around this? Because we've spent millions of dollars building new, subsidizing Catholic House of Charities, building these buildings, and other areas that, I have my opinions on this, but how do you think that we can solve this, and how do you think you can impact this from a commissioner standpoint?
So what's the incentive for somebody being moved off the streets into an apartment? What's their incentive to make any changes in their life?
That they don't have anything.
Well, there aren't any incentives. They just move them from one place to another.
Right.
But they're still continuing in their crime. They're still continuing in their
right.
in their drugs. There's no incentives. So we have to change how they are how they get the programs. How they there has to be accountability. Mm-hmm. And I think we can't just say, poor homeless person, I feel bad for you. Let me help you and give you everything that we think that you need so that you won't be homeless. If they don't work for it, they're not gonna value it.
Right.
They're not gonna value what's being given to them. What we gotta do is just stop the flow of money to the homeless that with no accountability. Mm-hmm. We have to have accountability. Is this working? Look at Seattle. I mean, I don't know if you've watched that documentary, Seattle is Dying, and I think there's a follow-up on that. Millions and millions and millions of dollars that have been just poured into the homeless situation. And And it's increased.
Money doesn't solve a spiritual issue. It cannot solve a spiritual issue.
It won't.
And it is, you move someone with problems from the street into an apartment. They still have their problems.
And not only that, you move them from the street and all the neighbors around them have problems as well. So you move them over here into this apartment. Now all the families that are in the houses around there, they have the problems that came with that spiritual mindset that's moved into there.
Correct. Yeah, and it affects the entire community, which is why it was so hard for our city council to find a place to house the homeless. And so, why is that? Well, it's because no one wants it on their front door, and you telling them that they're not being compassionate because they don't want it on their front door. It's like, well, hold on a second. What do you mean by compassion?
Right.
Your compassion clearly isn't aligning with what I see as being compassionate, because my compassion is allowing me my peace of mind for me to know I'm going home and to be safe at night with my family, and my kids can play in my yard without worrying about homeless people doing drugs and dropping needles. Hey, I grew up in a dead poor, and that's my British from now, place in the UK, where there were needles in the streets. Where you couldn't really go out to play because if almost every time you go out to play, you get into a fight with someone because the community was so broken. All family. I mean, I don't remember. I can probably count on one hand. I know of 3 people that I can recall from my you guys call it middle school, my middle school age, that had a family unit. Everyone else were broken homes. And me, I was angry. I didn't understand. I was angry all the time. These other kids were angry all the time. So what happens?
Everybody's angry.
Everyone's
Everybody's
angry.
fighting.
I mean, you literally could not go out without someone hollering something at you, and you then holler back, and then all of a sudden you're fighting, and you not really fighting over anything. It was, why did you look at me? Well, what do you mean? I'm not allowed to look at you? No, it's like, wait, what? Where are we?
Right.
And that's truly what happens. And so. This is such a tough issue for us to face, and I think that
very, very difficult.
We definitely need compassion. We definitely need hope, but we need Christ-like compassion. We need Christ-like hope.
So, was it compassionate for me to tell my son, "No, I'm not going to buy your motorcycle. You have to go work for the other half"?
Yes,
absolutely. It was. Yeah. Was it compassionate for me to discipline my son when he did something that he shouldn't have done? Yes, that was compassionate because I love him, and even though the old saying, "This hurts me more than it hurts you," I mean, it does hurt to have to instill discipline, but that's compassion, and we do that because we do care and we do love, and we want to see something better in them, and we know that they need that discipline.
And in that moment, you discipline and you let them sulk a little bit, and then you go away, and you, as a parent, an hour later. You go, I need to go talk to him, let him know I still love him, but that, hey, what you did wasn't okay. You broke the rules. Whether they think the rules are fair or not. Hey, there are rules in the Bible that I'm like, hey, this isn't fair, God. This is really hard. This is really hard for me. But it doesn't matter because that is the rule that the creator of this universe has bestowed upon me.
For our safety.
For our safety, for our sake, not for his.
Right.
It doesn't benefit him. It benefits us. And that's the true teaching. So, Chris, it was great to meet you. Let people know where to find you and how to get in touch with you if they have any questions.
Yeah. So my website is vote4chrism.com, and I appreciate all the support. And and the final platform issue that we really didn't get into is election integrity. And as county commissioners, they've been approached by citizens having to do with election integrity, and they're not happy. The citizens aren't happy with the results they're getting, and that's another one of the reasons why I jumped into this. Is as an electorate, if you don't have faith and confidence in the system, in the process, then
don't vote.
You're not going to vote. And I'm not saying there are any shenanigans or anything going on, but I was young enough to remember Ronald Reagan when I voted for him. But when I remember him saying, "Trust but verify." And right now they're just saying, no, just trust us. Everything's good here. And that can't be. There's got to be transparency. There's got to be a way that we can verify that there are no shenanigans going on.
Right.
What's the perfect crime?
The one you get away with?
Yeah, the one you get away with, the one that nobody knows about. You get away with it
right.
because nobody knows about it.
Right.
And so a lot of people have that in the back of their mind that's like, oh, we can't prove it, whatever, but...
It doesn't matter, proof or not. So here's where I think the key thing about election integrity. If everyone believes in a fair and just system, everyone cares about election integrity no matter where you are on the scale.
Right.
So whether or not you believe there were shenanigans or not, it's actually an irrelevant point to me, and this is just my perspective on this, is that it doesn't matter whether you believe or not. What matters is that we all agree election integrity is important, and we all should want that oversight,
Right.
regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum.
Exactly. And that was one of the main reasons that I jumped in the race after seeing everything that's going on the last couple years. I mean, I remember when Dino Rossi and Christine Gregoire, you weren't around back then, but mail-in ballots, and Dino Rossi won, and then there was a recount, and he won again, and then there was a third recount, and then a car full of ballots showed up, and now all of a sudden it was like by 300 votes, Christine Gregoire wins.
Wow.
And I'm like,
That's
things that make you go, And so that's we started having the mail-in ballots, and so
I never mail mine in. I always drop it off. Always.
Yeah, but just the whole process, there's got to be an audit in the system. And our current county commissioners, the commissioner I'm running against, she's the chair right now, and they approached her, and they had this a hearing on election integrity, and their response was they just deferred to their attorney and said, sorry, there's nothing we can do here. And that's not an the attorney works for us. I would say, Mr. Attorney, this is a concerned group of citizens that have very valid issues. How can we do our job within the realm of the law?
And even if the answer is there is nothing we can do, but give me a reason why. Tell me the reason behind why. When you spank your kid, you don't spank him and say, you don't just walk into the room, they've done something wrong, and spank him and go, there you go.
Yeah.
You go, I'm spanking you because you did this.
Yes.
Okay, well, tell me why there's nothing we can do.
Yep.
I totally agree with you. And Chris, we're a little bit out of time.
Yeah,
but,
thank you very much for the time.
So it's vote number 4 chrism.com.
Yes.
So vote number 4 chrism.com.
And on that page, there's a donate button.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.